Can you hear me, Jesse? Yes.
I
Okay.
can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
I didn't hear any translation, but I think I basically understood.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So-
Discipline versus project-based education, and basically we are saying no rigid framework, more flexible,
Yeah.
and so I know that you like the skunk work.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That was my fave. But no, I think I followed along. I mean, basically, but the gist of it.
Can I start off the panel discussion with a question for you two? I think a kind of funny intersection of both of your lectures was Buckminster Fuller and his visions from, the 30s onwards. I think Abe Sensei mentioned the shortening span of our sense of future with its multiplicities. While Jesse, I know you have written that the rate of innovative architectural production is actually slowing down.
Yeah.
I don't see these two as necessarily contradictory, but how would you two relate to Fuller's vision in terms of how you might make your own projections despite the unknowability and the idea of visionary in architecture, while I understand the meaning is transient? Perhaps you can discuss on this topic.
Oh, you're asking us?
Yes,
Oh, you are asking that question to Jesse?
both of you.
Both of. I thought answer is, first of all, architectural vision. What was the question?
The question is, I think that the idea of visionary, or like the future, how we, grasp with the future, is one of the
I'm
themes.
basically denying the visionary. So basically, I'm saying that the vision lasts only a few seconds, and so that means it's all contained. So there are many visions, like individual vision does coexist. So the difference is the strength of the vision at the moment, but there's no vision kind of a guarantees that that's going to take over the whole world. That's over. That was a whole
I think we're in agreement about that. I mean, I think there's also a hope that it wouldn't happen that way. Because I think there are still persistent ideologies that would that say certain technocracies or ways of thinking that would make that kind of assumption or try to impose it. But I think, Hitoshi, I would agree with you that it's unlikely, first of all, that it would happen. It probably, I think in terms of value, it probably shouldn't happen. And yeah, it's more about a whole, certainly architecture, even the kind of narrow scope of architecture, there are no longer kind of dominant overarching visions that the world of architects certainly would adhere to. I mean, it seems to have completely splintered into a whole set of vectors.
Yeah.
I think what I was talking about in this presentation was that's what it is. So we should take advantage of that and how we can actually transform the way that we teach students, and with the examples. So that was the presentation. So again, there's many sort of approaches, and there's a many sort of how to say that the background that you can stay, but in this case, I'm trying to talk about the architecture from more broader perspective. Well, I'd like to kind of think that maybe, the architecture can be understood much broader than the traditional way. And as a practitioner, I'm pretty much traditional. But as an educator, I see that there's I see much more open horizon and a different way to approach architecture. So, maybe there's a contradiction there too.
Yeah, I mean, even within the very narrow perspective of Fuller, his whole theory of geodesics and structure and economy and so forth, there were always, or not always, but there were parallel movements and people looking at similar kinds of logics that were much less, much less of a tendency to idealize these systems and structures. So Cyril Stanley Smith, the metallurgist, and other biologists were looking at structures, very actually geodetic or geodesic structures that were actually affected by the world or by other things, rather than, I don't know, the kind of teleology towards purifying the vision and then making it universal. They were looking at the way, maybe in a way similar to the metabolists' desire, to see those kinds of structures in interaction in almost an ecology with influences from the outside. And so I think that to me was more promising than, I don't know, the kind of modernist purism of a Fuller. Even
Can you hear me? Or is it working? Jesse, are you connected?
I
you are.
am, yes.
Yeah, sorry, the connection is a little unstable here. But I think we got the gist of it. So perhaps we can then talk about more about your role as educators now. I guess Abe-sensei mentioned like pushing the boundaries of architecture in teaching. What does that mean to you, Jesse? And like, I mean, I think you have very different approaches to education.
Not sure. I mean, I think Hitoshi was outlining, from what I understood, more general ambitions for the programs, and not so much in the specifics of the different studios and the approaches of each of the architects and the culture around specific design work. I think it was, my understanding was a broader sort of perspective on a range of projects, overall projects that Hitoshi is involved with. So I'm not
maybe one thing
so
which might be a
sure
little bit,
if we're actually that different.
one thing which might be a little different from the traditional, there's some idea that there should be the connection to much larger sort of a foundation of the discipline. And then you kind of take a role within that, the canon, idea of canon, and the idea of this kind of a series of, how to say, especially in US, there's a kind of essence of architecture to make architecture. And you have to, I mean, even this kind of a program at NAAB is crafted that way. So that way you have to learn all of this to go through. But then what I'm saying right now is that let's forget about learning this kind of a process, but just cut it, you know, why don't we just flip the whole thing and respond to the situation, like respond to the project, and then collect the necessary informations and the knowledge and expertise to resolve that. And that itself is an interesting way to actually learn something. And then that method might be more contemporary, suits to the situation we are facing right now. So that's what I'm kind of basically saying. So it's kind of the other way around. So then from here, you might learn something much larger happening in the past. But so you are not, how to say, so those kind of big things comes maybe after or as a part of the knowledge to solve the problem in front of you. So,
right. I mean, I think there's, I do differ, I guess, from that perspective to a certain extent. I mean, that's why I showed the kind of performance values of the Stern project equivalent, say, to the to Tom Main's, that they both, got LEED platinum performance ratings. So that there is something else. I mean, I suppose it's how you frame the
Jesse,
problem.
I thought we are talking about the same thing, because that's why that's project and project, right? So the differences of those two are the different projects.
They're profound.
If everything is actually dictated by some kind of bigger flow of thinking, then they should come to the same conclusion.
And they didn't.
Because it's a project specific, that's why, right? So you talked about this idea of, what's the word, like not the improvisation, but responding to the particular or specificity of the situation and then extracting out such essence. I think that that's the, so what I'm proposing is that how to create such an education to address that directly, because those are the things that which is not right. So I don't know, hopefully I'm making sense.
No, you're making sense. It's
So,
the thing that we have been wrestling with now with the students too is kind of preconceptions about what is design, and also that they can preconceive it all before they put mouse to pad or pencil to paper or what have you. And it's the hardest thing to get them to start. And I guess before there was such a thing as a canon, or there was some basis upon which to base, the new work or to react to it. But that's increasingly going away. Or it's just not shared knowledge anymore. I mean, I know Tom Main was horrified, and he's trying to remedy the situation by asking all the architects to name their canonical projects and to make that visible to the students and to interest them in that. Not sure if that's going to be successful or not, but
I actually scared Tom at my review. So he said he don't understand it and so on, and in a nice way.
But it's symptomatic, I think, of the situation that I think all of us face, certainly in the United States. I mean, that there are multiple forces at work now, in architecture or associated to architecture that seek to push the discipline in one way or another. I mean, the whole identity politics thing I don't know, that's probably more peculiar to the United States and its history.
Right. Jesse, probably they want us to talk about technology a little bit, but the thing is that the
That's an
technology,
important thing for the Japanese people.
Yeah, can I talk to you, both of them?
Sure.
Thank you very much for the stimulating speech, both of you. And back to our title on DX, and DX is one of the buzzwords in Japan now. But there are also other buzzwords, such as Anthropocene. The fate of the Earth depends on the influence of human on it. And another buzzword is VUCA. We call it VUCA. It stands for the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, a term used by the US Army to describe the current world situation. And it is becoming more and more difficult to judge things currently in this world. And under these circumstances, I think it is not easy to think about various future possibilities with students and give shape with them. So do you have any hint on how to solve, can I say solve this problem? So please share your thoughts with us.
Go ahead.
Hitoshi, are you?
Oh,
I wasn't sure about some of the terminology.
I can only respond to the question. So it's so difficult to predict. So how are we gonna guide the student? Then the answer is, I said, basically you cannot guide the student towards a certain direction, towards some sort of a believable future or whatever. You have to respond to the things in front of you so that you can actually create your own reality and then create your own gravity around it. So then each student or each group will actually work on their own reality. And then within that, there's a design problem and so on. So it's really impossible to coordinate the sort of a big canon leading everybody towards some shared future. I don't think so. Even like Jesse pointed out, even the technology, which is very simple and which is very, connected to the saving the energy, but the result are different, right? The two architects are presenting totally different reality. And I think that's the reality that we are facing at this moment. So that we have to really let the student to learn how to put their own reality together and then learn how to actually make it happen. And that's the only thing we can do as an educator. And that's where I am, at least.
Yeah, I mean, with the sustainability arguments, much of what is being done in a positive sense is almost at a statistical level. That both buildings are performing their work relative to CO2 and carbon and all of the other, energetics, but the contributions are invisible and they operate at huge scales. And so, yeah, I mean, you're also left, as Hitoshi is saying, with the specific thing in front of you, which, while it performs that way, has other qualities. There's a qualitative and cultural dimension to the contribution as well, which is not a statistical entity. I mean, but they both happen at the same time, right? I mean, you can kind of address the CO2 problem, but then how you do it would be as different as, I don't know, eating space food sticks or a very good meal in Kyoto, which quantitatively the same amount of minerals, carbon, whatever, but qualitatively forget it.
Thank you very much.
But I think, the other thing that I'm noticing, and this is all just, I'm just relating what I see among a new generation of students, is there's a sudden interest in very traditional practices, tangible things, crafts, ceramics, metal smithing, all of the things that students 15 years ago would have laughed at. And I think it's probably the consequence of, being on the screen so much, that dimension of their physical lives, is somehow lacking. So I think that's also something that there could be very anti-intuitive futures, which could appear really old.
Do you see that in Princeton?
I see it in Princeton, among the students there. There's a kind of shift. The generation who are there, well, I guess they're just coming into this, 21st century, have a very different perception of what the technology does for them and what it doesn't do, or how, these analog technologies mesh with digital ways of, living and being, and all of those
There's
things.
a shift in the past couple of years. I agree.
It's a very
more politically charged. Some students are politically charged or conscious. And then also, I can see, yesterday at the review, students started to talk of Renaissance architecture. I asked the question, why there's a black and white stripe? And then he started to talk about Renaissance.
Wow.
So
things
are changing again, I think.
That generation, so-called.
Or it's not maybe generation, it's more, there are many different kind of students now. It's really mixed. What?
Sorry, another dealing with other issues now. Okay.
But there must be some questions, and usually in this kind of symposium, you kind of ask questions based on the question that given by your audience.
Yes, we are checking Slack as we move along, but there have been no questions so far.
So that means we've been doing a bad job, I guess.
Let's see.
But I think then let me just ask question. In this past 15 years since I'm here, there's always a question about BIM and digital technology in Japan, and why the literacy of the students is so low. Is it changing, or is it getting better, or is that part of the conversation here in this association, JIA?
Basically, talking that situation in students and professors and teachers, and I think that there's not so much discussion here. So perhaps this tendency hasn't changed. And this kind of educational subject, I pass to Ko Sensei, please.
I think that perhaps because of the system of construction here and set up, I think that's a big part of how we deal with that in school, academia, because and the role of designer versus the contractors, right? Because I think we relegate that role really like quite easily, pass it on to the big general contractors here, but we do try to address it in this conference. But also I think that the point of technology precedes science is overlooked, really. Maybe not just in Japan, but globally.
I'm curious about that too. I mean, my understanding is that Japanese architects actually don't have to detail as much as, say, American architects who are trying to do something, at a high level, because the construction companies have such expertise when it comes to that. And it's something that I find very interesting. I mean, as a kind of phenomenon. I don't know if that's entirely true or whether that's only among certain, famous Japanese architects, whether they have access to that, level of expertise where maybe a general practitioner doesn't. But yeah, I've understood that, there's a very different way of working back and forth between the architect, say, and the general contractor in Japan.
But the Jesse, you have to really see that at the initial presentation, I showed you how the architects spread in a different kind in Japan. During that process, because it doesn't have any strong professional entity to protect the profession, so many of the work that are supposed to belong to the architect's realm were taken by the contractors. So in a way that they have more room in the budget. And then if you look at the drawing of the Japanese architect, they call it CD is actually DD in US.
Right.
And then the CD set, which is usually the part of the architect's work in US, is actually within the scope of contractor. But then, so the economy around the architecture is divided in a different way from the US.
Yes.
And then the same things, this kind of also the spread of the technology. And as actually Ko-san said, she said it depends on the large corporation and so on,
Right.
Which is also, if you remember, the beginning of the BIM was pushed by Frank Gehry as a way to regain architect the power again. So it's a really different kind of story happening, and which is kind of interesting too. And then to tell the truth, I don't know which one is better or happier for Fu.
Right. I think.
I mean, I guess the question too is it only among? I mean, we in the United States, we only know a very limited number of very well-known Japanese architects who get the support and do the visible buildings. But I wonder too whether a small firm or more kind of average firm gets the same kind of support or the same access to the technology and so forth.
Depends on the project, depends on the client, it depends on the contractor, I have to say. But it's not limited to the certain famous architect. There's still some kind of people like a contractor who are dedicated to the good work and kind of believe in such kind of work relationship based on the craftsmanship. So even for the small residential project, you might get something fantastic as a collaboration.
And I think a short point I would also like to make is that the design fee in Japan is very low, while construction fee is very high. And so I think there's a danger in that, dividing, kind of giving up a certain role of the designer is a bit worrisome.
But it was embedded from the beginning, right? The way that the fee is, like if this much you have to do, architect decided to do only this much and then left this much to be. So that's where the economical division is happening. And I don't know how you can revise it. So if architect wants to expand this, you have to work for free under the current
I
situation.
know all about that.
Okay, I think there's a question from a student to Abe Sensei, which
Okay,
I will read in Japanese first.
sure.
I hope the translator can translate this.
通訳が訳してくれます。
未来に対する既存の
For
ビ
the
ジョン
future,
生徒、
the existing business,
未来に対し思考してアウトプットする教育に自身も
the
共感します。
output to
ですが、
think
我
about
々
the future, I agree.
何をベースにこれから思考していけ
As
ばい
a
いのでし
student,
ょうか。
what
実
kind
践
of
で
base that I
未来に
should
ついて考える機会を設
base
ける
my
こと
thoughts
が
on?
講義でもご紹介されていましたが、その思考のベースとなる歴史学や哲
Explained
学は
about
これまでと変化しないので
lectures
しょうか。
and classes, but the basis for that, the philosophy and history has not really changed.
はい、聞こえます。
僕が申し上げた歴史や哲学を勉強するなって言ったのではなくて、それがこう組み立てた一つのこうカリキュラムとして、それをこう一旦習得してから何かやるっていうんじゃなくて、自分がやることの中
Rather
心に必要な知識を集めて、
that you should gather the necessary knowledge and build up your own reality and proceed with it and learn as you move on. So I'm not saying don't study history or philosophy. So what you should do is not something that you are given, but that's something that you should bring by yourself. So if you are not in a project type environment, that's what you should do. You have to bring it out by yourself. I myself and Jesse, we are in the reality and we are building up the project in the reality. So basically, that kind of training need to be done by yourself.
なんかシーンとされると不安になるんだけど、聞こえてます？
When people keep silent, that made me anxious. Can you hear what I said?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Abe Sensei. Yes? No, Jesse, you can hear me, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
because I'm in the English channel now, so okay.
There's no translation, so I don't know.
Okay. It was, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't get all of your answer, but we have about 2 minutes left of the discussion. I'll just read another comment. I'll just read it in English now. So one is surprised that at UCLA, there are 100% of the students become architects, or they strive to become architects. In Japanese universities, there are the number of students who strive to become architectural designers are decreasing. If we shift from the discipline model to the project-based model, do you think there will be more students who want to become architects? No. Okay, answer is
No,
no.
because it's a fundamentally different system, as I explained, right? The architecture school in Japan is designed to accept so many sort of a variety of the people looking for the future related to the architecture. But in US, everybody who wants to be architect come to school, right? So that's really different. the role of the school, role of the departments are fundamentally different.
Okay, thank you. One more. Now all the questions are flooding in. I don't think we can go through them now. So a short one. Thank you for the lecture. And what kind of mindset should the educators have? Yeah, I guess a short answer from both of you, and then we can conclude this session.
I think you shouldn't try to teach students, but work with them. Period.
Thank you, Jesse.
Hard question. I mean, I guess I'm old-fashioned, and so I think there's still value in, I don't know, the kind of historic legacy of the discipline. At the same time, yeah, I mean, I think the way of working and designing that receptive has to be open and open to what the work they're doing is giving back to them. So I guess it's in a way an anti-conceptual approach.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm told to keep the time, so time is up.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for the lectures.
Thank you very much.
And
Jesse, what time is it over there? 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock.
また切れちゃった。
In New York,
そうじゃあ
10 o'clock.
Have a nice evening. Yeah.
Okay,
have a
so
nice
I would
evening.
like to turn it over to Dr. Fukuda. Let me check
Okay.
the.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Wait, hold on! Please don't leave.
Ciao.